Oh, hello there. You snuck up on me. Let me just clear my search history real quick. No, I wasn't jerking off. Those tissues are for something else. Anyway, welcome to Overrated, Underrated, or Properly Rated, Part 3. You know the drill by now. Let's begin. Bach asks, Derek Carr. He doesn't seem to be recognized as much more than an average quarterback, but recently some players have vouched for his skill, and his play seems good enough to be considered on the higher end of quarterbacks in the league. Well, you can certainly do worse than Derek Carr, but you can also do better. In my mind, he's never been consistent enough to be a truly top-tier quarterback, and considering his arm talent, he's a huge tease. I don't think he's overrated, though, since, seriously, who thinks he's elite? He's firmly a top 10 to 15 guy. Verdict, properly rated. Luke the Duke asked, I would love to hear your thoughts on the charioteer Gaius Diocles. Although he didn't win a race until 124 AD, once he started at the Circus Maximus in Rome, he won 1,462 of the 4,257 races he competed in. He also had a super long career for a charioteer, lasting 24 years, winning over 35,863,120 sesterce silver. To me, Diocles was a system racer, and he only won when he had the best bred horses. He should change his name to Gaius Brady. Verdict, overrated. Adam T. Sterling Sharpe. Before his career was cut down by injuries, he was an incredible wide receiver for the Packers. Some Packers fans are even calling for him to be entered into the Hall of Fame. Sharpe was the real deal and better than his more famous brother who was in the Hall of Fame. He was widely considered a top 2 or 3 wide receiver behind only Jerry Rice when he retired in 1994. There's no telling the numbers he could have put up if he played with prime MVP Favre. I would have no problem with him making the Hall of Fame personally. Verdict, underrated. Saul Sussman. Dennis Rodman. He was a key contributor to the second three-peat Bulls and is one of the most recognized NBA players in history. Rodman is a lot like Draymond Green to me. Not much of a scorer, and if he's your first or second option offensively, you're in a lot of trouble. But he excelled at all the other shit that impacts winning. I don't think the Bad Boy Pistons and the second three-peat Bulls win all those rings without Rodman's insane defense and offensive rebounding. Verdict, properly rated. Kai Ogre 20. Ben Wallace, one of the greatest defensive basketball stars of the mid-2000s and a key contributor to the Pistons championship team in 2004. Well, to me, it's very similar to Rodman. He had amazing defensive impact that was not overrated, but you could make the case that he is the worst offensive player to make the Hall of Fame in a very, very long time. In my opinion, the praise and the weaknesses even out. Verdict, properly rated. AB 28. Luke Kuechly, one of the best linebackers when he was healthy with the Panthers, but had his career cut short due to injuries. Thoughts? Well, he was absolutely not overrated. When he was on the field, he was dominant and all-pro basically every year of his career. If not for concussions, I really think he'd be seen with Ray Lewis, Dick Butkus, Junior Seau, Brian Urlacher, and Derek Brooks as really one of the best linebackers of all time. My verdict? Properly rated. Mike Scanlon. Hey Barry, I would like to hear your thoughts on Dominique Wilkins, one of the most underrated scorers in NBA history in my opinion. He averaged at least 25 points a game for 10 straight seasons. However, he never led the Hawks past the second round of the playoffs. Wilkins is the 1980s version of Carmelo Anthony for me. Lots of points on average efficiency and not a lot of playoff wins. He got worse in the playoffs, and despite his amazing athleticism and legendary dunks, he never really applied himself to any other area of the game besides scoring, and his team suffered for it. Verdict, overrated. Tanish Patel. Jaron Jackson Jr. He's played fairly well throughout his career, but has struggled with injuries. He has been a great shot blocker, but a below average rebounder for his position. I absolutely hate Jaron Jackson Jr.'s game. He shoots the ball like it's a medicine ball. He doesn't shoot threes at a high clip. He struggles to finish around the rim, and for all his athleticism, as you said, he's a terrible, terrible rebounder. Plus, he's foul prone because he tries to block every shot. No defensive discipline. I am not a fan. Verdict, overrated. Lane Killy? I hope I'm saying that right. Ben Coates, I would probably say the second best tight end of the 90s behind Shannon Sharpe. He was also the original Patriots tight end who wore 87 people thought of before Gronk came to town. I feel people tend to forget about him sometimes. Love your content, by the way. Thank you. Coates was an absolute monster in the mid to late 90s, and it's unfortunate he fell off of a cliff for some reason as soon as he hit 30 because he looked like he was on a potential Hall of Fame path at one point. Hard to say he's overrated. Verdict, underrated. Acute Badri. Again, I hope I'm saying this right. Steve Nash. His offensive impact was legendary as he led the number 1 or 2 offense for 8 straight years. I think he's underrated because Kobe stans always tried to diminish his MVPs, even though I think he deserved them. Well, should Nash have won 2 MVPs? No, but he is still one of the best point guards of all time, and as you said, consistently led elite offenses every year. But seriously, who even overrates Nash on an all-time scale? It's not like he's seen as a top 20 player ever or something because of his MVPs. I think he's rightfully viewed in that top 40-ish range, and there's nothing wrong with that. Verdict? Properly rated. Awesome Matt, 94. Karl Anthony Towns. Has he reached his potential in the NBA? Does his play style put him in an upper tier among centers in the current landscape? As a T-Wolves fan, I wonder your opinion on him. Well, Cat is obviously very talented and extremely efficient and can shoot very well for a big man, but there is something missing. He's not as good of a defender as he should be, and his motor seems to run a little hot and cold. Overrated though? I'm not sure I would say that. Verdict? Properly rated. Eli Arbeza. Cal Ripken Jr., all-time record for consecutive games played, great fielder, and revolutionized the shortstop position. Ripken was a good player who was extremely durable, obviously, and he played forever, but he wasn't dominant outside of a year or two, and he had way more lackluster seasons than you'd expect. He's a deserving Hall of Famer, obviously, but not quite as good as the common baseball fan thinks. Shout out to Kevin Costner. If you know, you know. Verdict? Overrated. Gio asks, Clayton Kershaw, possibly the best regular season pitcher of all time, but only has one ring despite a lot of stacked teams, largely in part because he sucked in the postseason for many years. Kershaw will deservedly make the Hall of Fame someday, so it's hard to say he's overrated, but yes, his lack of durability and his puzzling playoff chokes prevent him from reaching the top 2 or 3 pitcher ever status that a lot of people thought he could once reach way back during his MVP peak. Verdict? Properly rated. Jack C. Jacob deGrom, the best ace in the league right now with the best velocity ever, but never had an amazing win-loss record and couldn't stay healthy recently. Well, deGrom will not finish his career with eye-popping counting stats due to a late start and lackluster run support and because of some injuries, but seriously, what pitcher isn't injured? They all get injured. But anybody who has watched him play obviously knows he's very special. When healthy, he's rightfully considered the best pitcher in the sport. If he's able to churn out 3 or 4 more elite healthy seasons, he should waltz into the Hall of Fame when he's retired. Verdict? Properly rated. Jeremiah Lynch. Steve Smith Sr. Easily one of the best wide receivers of the 2000s, but never seems to get talked about that much. Even though Steve Smith had serious anger issues and beat up several teammates in fights, shout out to Michael Jordan, I couldn't help but like the guy. The guy was 5'9", and to survive at wide receiver in the NFL at that height, you gotta be a little fucked in the head, and Smith was certainly that, but in a good way. He was a warrior, and he never even played with a great quarterback. He should make the Hall of Fame someday. Verdict? Underrated. Yeehaw Bang Bros. Johnny Sins, he's one of the biggest contributors to society, a respected doctor, firefighter, and best of all, a troop. I don't know why people don't talk about him more. Well, it's obvious that people are jealous of his talents, and any person who thinks Johnny Sins is overrated in any way is not a friend of mine and quite honestly should be arrested. Verdict? Underrated and respects women. Braden Harrell. Alright Barry, this is an incredibly important question that will judge you and all of your kin for the next 7 generations. Is Olive Garden overrated? It's interesting you bring up my family because I actually lost my marriage from becoming addicted to Olive Garden breadsticks. Why'd you have to bring up this painful memory for me, you dick? Verdict? Overrated. Vintage G-Funk. Michael Thomas. Before the injury, he was putting up all-time production over his first few seasons, but he has garnered the reputation as a short route specialist only, which I don't believe is entirely fair. What are your thoughts? Well, I don't know if Thomas will ever make it back to elite status like he was before his injury, but the guy was obviously great, even if the slant jokes were kind of true. He caught a lot of short passes by design because Breeze's arm was gone. He has to earn back the elite status, though. Overall verdict? Properly rated for now. Demi 9040. Kyrie Irving. He's my favorite player, and honestly, I feel he's gotten in his own way in becoming one of the best guards ever. Injuries also played a part in stunting growth and stopping his teams. Well, I mean, let's be honest, Kyrie's a weirdo, but the man is incredibly gifted at scoring the basketball. His talent is not overrated, but his career, as you said, does leave a lot to be desired due to consistent injuries and, well, let's just say he gets in his own way a lot. His ceiling is incredible, but he's so unpredictable and unreliable. However, if he's in the right state of mind playing next to LeBron and Anthony Davis in LA, the league should be very, very worried. Verdict? Properly rated. Gaming Squad. David Ortiz was a borderline Hall of Fame case in my opinion, but the postseason pushed him over the edge for me. I'd like to hear your thoughts on him as a Red Sox fan. I absolutely fucking hated David Ortiz. Yes, I'm a Yankees fan. And although the man was undeniably clutch in the playoffs, he was also a fat slob and a drug cheat. I don't care that he cheated, by the way, and he did cheat, but if he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, then A-Rod, Clemens, Bonds, McGuire, Sosa, and other drug cheats who were better players than Ortiz need to be in as well, immediately. Verdict, overrated. Jackson. Lady Gaga, by far my favorite music artist, has had so many hit songs over the years, even somewhat recently. Unlike many female singers nowadays, Gaga actually has talent, which shocked me when I first heard her sing for real. She's a good musician even if she's a very, very big weirdo. She's also not bad looking when she isn't putting on pounds of makeup to look like Ronald McDonald. Verdict, properly rated. Flames of unaliving. Jadeveon Clowney, he was such a hype prospect during his high school and college years, but his professional career seems to have not lived up to the hype. Thoughts? Well, I am old enough to remember the Clowney hype when he was coming out of high school, and to this day, his high school highlight tape is honestly the most impressive thing I've ever seen. I thought as long as he stayed healthy in the NFL, he would be an all-pro every year, and although he's had some injuries, that just has not happened even when he's been healthy. He's been good and isn't a bad player, but he's definitely fallen short of expectations. Verdict, overrated. Drew. Hey Barry, I'd like to know your thoughts on the various Chucky/Child's Play films. No offense to Karl Malone. Oh, that's a good one. I thoroughly enjoyed the original Child's Play movie. I thought the story was great, and I never found Chucky to be scary, but he was still to be taken seriously. But as is usually the case, as the franchise progressed, the quality declined, and Chucky became much more of a comedian than a killer. It's a shame. Verdict, overrated. Owen Griffith. Joel Embiid. The last 2 years, he's been in the MVP discussion, but come playoff time, he's always injured. As a Sixers fan, I love him, but I feel like he's slightly overrated because he puts up numbers in the regular season, but can never make it past the second round of the playoffs. I am not a fan of Embiid's game. He's fucking terrible to watch because he flops endlessly despite his immense strength and size advantages, that's what she said. He's a great player, obviously, but he has still never played a full postseason, and thus far, his play has consistently dropped off in the playoffs in his career, as you alluded to. Anthony Davis gets made fun of for being fragile, but Embiid is even worse in that regard, and he's not better than Jokic. Verdict, overrated. Austin Berry. Zion Williamson, since he just got a max deal after playing 85 games. I desperately want Zion to succeed. He is an absolutely incredible talent and amazing to watch. Other than LeBron, Zion is the best finisher around the basket that I have ever seen. His athleticism is freakish and jaw-dropping. If he stays healthy and motivated, his name will be mentioned among the legends of the sport when he's done playing. I believe that. Verdict, underrated. Wolfgang. Moses Malone. 3 MVPs, yet rarely mentioned as a top 15 player of all time. Moses is an interesting case. He was a dominant player for a short time, winning 3 MVPs, a ring, and a finals MVP, but he weirdly declined after 1983 at just 27 years old. He also would not translate well to today's game. He couldn't space the floor, he couldn't pass, and he was really slow defensively. His place in history should be respected, but we have to be honest, okay? Verdict, overrated. Slowed Bloom, 91-88. Marquise Colston, he had almost 10,000 receiving yards, won a Super Bowl, played for almost 10 years, but he never made a Pro Bowl, which I think is a crime. I think for a 7th round pick, he was a major steal. Thoughts? Well, obviously he was a draft steal, and I don't know why he never made a Pro Bowl. He was certainly good enough to make several of them. However, my lasting memory of him will always be his hilarious failed lateral at the end of the 2013 divisional round playoff game versus Seattle. It was a Bill Buckner moment, but hey, Colston has a ring, so I'm sure he's not too upset. Verdict, underrated. Mensur Memadagic. Allen Robinson II never really had a great quarterback, but has still put up great stats. In this past year, when he had a down year, he had a lot of hate. Look, Robinson's a good wide receiver, but the way the media and fans talk about him as if he's some all-time great player stuck on bad teams is annoying. He chose to play with shitty quarterbacks in Chicago. Now he's finally on a good team with the Rams. Let's see how he does. I doubt he puts up superstar numbers. Verdict, overrated. Michael Avenriep. Rudy Gobert. I've always thought he is massively overrated due to his offense lacking, and I was so disappointed to see the Timberwolves give up so much to get him. Would love to hear your thoughts on the trade and/or Rudy Gobert. Gobert is arguably the most disrespected and made fun of NBA player on social media, and some of it is deserved and some of it is not. His playoff deficiencies are well known and real, but his impact in the regular season is also real, and he is an objectively good player. So the trade should help the T-Wolves in the regular season, but is he really going to help them out in the playoffs? I don't think so. Verdict, properly rated. Jack Childrey. Eddie George. Titans fans often act like he was a precursor to Derrick Henry, and I even see him talked about more than Chris Johnson. However, outside of the Titans ecosystem, he's rarely brought up. I respect George's toughness and his physical style of play, but his efficiency was fucking terrible for a running back. In 9 seasons, he had over just 4 yards per carry or better 2 times. Over his last 5 years in the league, he averaged a horrific 3.4 yards per carry. That's Trent Richardson territory, folks. I understand there's some give and take when it comes to yards per carry, but the guy just never broke off runs that elite backs do. Verdict, overrated. overrated. Brock Sells. Tim Tebow. Honestly, I don't really know what to think. Some say he got screwed and could have been really good if given time, while others say his mechanics were so bad there's no way he could have improved. Tebow could not play quarterback in the NFL. He just couldn't. That being said, he had the build and athletic ability to be an incredible fullback if he had been willing to change positions, but he just wasn't willing to do so. Tebow Mania was fun while it lasted, but it was short for a reason. Verdict: overrated. Logan B. The game of hockey. I know you don't review hockey on this channel, but do you think the game is underrated? Most people are sleeping on hockey altogether. There are facets of hockey that I actually enjoy whenever I get around to watching it during the playoffs, but my biggest gripe is that the ice always feels a little bit too congested. There are too many passes and there are too many shots that get blocked, and it disrupts the flow of the game. I feel if it was 4-on-4 instead of 5-on-5, it would be way better. Verdict: properly rated, I guess. I don't know how to rate this. Teddy the God. Yao Ming. I'm curious to see your take. I grew up watching him and always thought if he wasn't hurt, he would be top 10 easy. Well, Ming was a very good player. Nobody disputes that, but this really comes down to whether or not you believe he's a Hall of Famer, and I don't. He didn't have enough great seasons or playoff success to warrant it. He got in largely because he helped grow the sport around the world, particularly in China, but not on his own merit as an NBA player. Had he stayed healthy, I'm sure he could have gotten there, but hey, he didn't stay healthy. Verdict: overrated. Excel. Ken Griffey Jr. Ken Griffey Jr. is one of the best baseball players of all time, as well as one of the biggest what-ifs. He is one of the most well-liked athletes ever in any sport, and this can sometimes lead to people overrating him based on nostalgia. No, he is not better than Barry Bonds. No, he was not better than Barry Bonds in the 90s. Other than that, though, I can't say he's overrated because when he was at his best in Seattle, he was legitimately dominant. Verdict: properly rated. Drew Vogelair. Tom Izzo. The guy is considered an all-time great coach, yet he has only one championship and it happened over 20 years ago. Izzo is buddies with a lot of people in the media, so he mostly gets a pass for acting like a blithering dipshit to his players, and also the fact that he gets talked about as if he has multiple NCAA championships when he has just one that, as you mentioned, came over 20 years ago. He's a really good coach, he's just not John Wooden or Coach K or Roy Williams. Verdict: overrated. Mark Larson. Dwayne Wade, particularly the years he played with LeBron in Miami. If you're talking about his entire career, Dwayne Wade might be just slightly overrated, but still an all-time great player. If you're talking strictly about his 4 years with LeBron in Miami, then he is absurdly overrated and propped up as a superstar by LeBron haters, even though any person who watched those teams knows Wade wasn't a superstar after 2011. Verdict: overrated. Nick Alberti. Carmelo Anthony. Some see him as one of the best scorers ever. Some see him as an overrated, inconsistent volume shooter. Also, Barry, gosh, you are handsome. Oh, thank you so much. That made my day. Well, I've always felt Carmelo was overrated, and I've never understood why he has so many fans. I believe it has a lot to do with his awesome name. Sure, he won titles in college and the Olympics, but who gives a shit? He was always a one-dimensional shot jacker who stunk in the playoffs and never came close to winning anything. I have nothing personal against the guy, he's just not that great. Verdict: overrated. Caden Kristiniak. The 1985 Chicago Bears. I would consider them the greatest NFL team of all time, but am I overrating them because of their defense? The 1985 Bears themselves are not overrated. They have a very strong argument for being the best team in NFL history. They went 18-1 and won all their playoff games in dominating fashion behind a legendary defense while also having a huge cultural impact. My question, though, has always been, why didn't that team reel off 3 or 4 titles? In that sense, the 80s Bears are overrated because they should have won multiple titles at least. Verdict: properly rated. David Logan. Mike Schmidt. Don't know if he's underrated, but he just seems forgotten. I almost never hear him come up in conversations about the best baseball players of all time. I know there's a gap between Ruth, Bonds, Trout, and everyone else, but no one was a better third baseman than Michael J. Schmidt. Well, I agree, Mike Schmidt is rightfully considered to be the best third baseman of all time by pretty much everybody, but I can't get over the fact that he looks like a low-budget 1970s porn star, and no, I do not know why he has his hand in his pants in this photo. Verdict: properly rated. Jimboology, by the way. Trent Green, a great quarterback and an even better broadcaster. LOL. Trent Green is one of those good quarterbacks whose name gets lost more and more the longer after he's done playing. He could legitimately play, and although he was blessed with a great offensive supporting cast in St. Louis and Kansas City, he was still a top quarterback in the league for about half a decade. If he hadn't gotten hurt in 1999, maybe he has Kurt Warner's career. Verdict: underrated and handsome. Joe. The Saw series. I feel like after a few of the films it became very cheap, repetitive, and not so scary. Well, believe it or not, I really like the Saw franchise. I enjoyed turning my brain off and watching people try to escape military-grade death traps in abandoned warehouses for several hours. I also didn't start watching the films until about a decade after they came out, so for like 10 years, I thought the killer was the little clown puppet on the tricycle they showed in all the trailers. Yeah. Verdict? Underrated. Daniel Bogovic. Luka Doncic, in my opinion, the most overrated player in the NBA right now. He could live up to the hype, but as I see it, still has a lot of work to do. Well, Luka is a generational talent and absolutely not overrated, but he dominates the ball a ton, which leaves some legit questions as to whether or not he will ever be able to win a championship that way. I don't think he can, unless Dallas gets him another superstar or changes the way they built the team. Verdict? Properly rated. Billy Edmiston. Ben Roethlisberger, my favorite quarterback of all time, as I am a diehard Steelers fan. Want to know how you'd rate the infamous women respecter? Also, hi Barry, wave emoji. I see your Mr. Meeseeks Avi as well, Billy. Hello. Well, as most of you know, I love making fun of Ben Roethlisberger any chance I can get because he's such a massive piece of shit. He had a weird career, and a career which might have ended way sooner had he started a few years later, if you know what I mean. I think for the most part, he's properly rated as a quarterback. He's a Hall of Famer due to stats and rings, but he's not on the same level as other guys from his era like Peyton, Brady, Breeze, and Rodgers. Verdict? Properly rated. Chi Jits. YouTube, a great platform overall, but there are many legitimate qualms with the platform. Your thoughts? I think YouTube is an absolutely fabulous platform. The one issue I have with it is that people tend to end their videos abruptly. I mean, seriously, what is up with that?